education part 2, we're going to kind of talk about the learner credential wallet. And this is basically what they're talking about when they're talking about what we're doing here. We're going to have a block format. Some of it's the regular blockchain block things that we'd be looking for: state root, nonce, hashes, difficulty sized, timestamps, block height, and so on. The unique fields to this block format, though, are the ID, and that's going to be my universal student ID. This is going to be my worldwide universal ID, and whatever format that will take is probably going to be a base 64 style code that's only belongs to me. The issuer could be University of Maryland, NCU, ITT Tech, or whomever, right, at whatever point I was in there, and then my name, my full-on legal name for this, and then maybe any kind of nicknames I was known as, because we all have our formal legal name, and then we have our also known as, our AKAs. So remember, once released, once consent is given, FERPA no longer applies. The block remains free and open, unencrypted for transparency. Remember that loophole as we kind of go through this, because as they go through and they did this, and we'll go through this digital credentials, GitHub IO, that ID and that wallet is to make sure that you've got a certificate, you've got a verifiable credential and learning credential. So that initial start, right, is going to be whatever the certificate is, whether it's my Udemy certificate for AWS or it's my PhD in cybersecurity. That's my verifiable credential. And that is a really important part of the code. Then the issuer. That sample issuer is the one they're doing for digital credentials, but remember that issuer can be a company, it can be a person, it can be whatever. So if we do things, if you do 4GE, if your issuer is 4GE or some other boot camp or something else, we have to make a way to make sure that an issuer is actually a legit issuer, right? We don't need a diploma mill in here. No, when it was issued and exactly by the UTC, the type would be personal, ID of that certificate, and then the name of the person, house credential, educational, program completion, and what did I get? What did I earn from that? And the other thing that makes this interesting too is that how do we name it? So the name of the credential, DCC program completion, awarded on completion of the digital credential program. The weird part about it, and this is one thing I would want to see on this one, is not just start dates and end dates, right? I would want to know when they actually did it, and those fields are empty. But I would also want to be able to go back and have a skills listing. I would also want to have a link back to the organization that actually issued that credential, and so I could bring it up as part of a syllabus, as part of a web page. So I knew what was actually involved with that, especially if I'm looking at it from an employer. Not all credentials are created equal, and not all colleges and not all programs have the same standards. So I would want to know a bit more on this one. So there's more data in here inside this learner credential wallet, inside this block, that I would want to have, just from my own vantage point, right? So what's interesting though is how we would request it. So the issuer, the non-credential availability, hey, here we got, boom, here, this person just earned this really cool thing. And then the wallet itself, right? We're going to set up the wallet if they haven't got it, and establish a connection, then select the identifier, create issuance request, the issuance process all the way through, and then we're going to persist it all the way across the board. So it's really interesting how that issue is going to go, hey, I've got this credential. Okay, let's go ahead, let's set up the back end, let's shove it into a block, let's do the process, and then let's move from there so that someone can then look it up inside the blockchain. Now the presentation, it could be a little bit different. So I hand my employer my QR code for discovery, and then they receive the presentation request, they validate it, they construct it, they look at my unique student ID inside the blockchain and pull everything that comes out for that. They prove it, they take it, they present it, they set it up as a presentation so that the information is easy to read, and hopefully in date time format by credential in a descending order. Right? Again, we haven't decided that yet. And then send that presentation submission to the person requesting it, and then that is all handled. This all has to happen in milliseconds across the blockchain. So interesting, right, in terms of how that works. Because again, the more you live, the more you learn cool stuff, the more it needs to be brought up in a really quick manner. And if you've got a really dense educational presentation like I do, with multiple colleges, multiple degrees, multiple Udemy and Coursera and edX courses, and all the rest of it, milliseconds may not be enough. So interesting. We have to make sure that we can get this data quickly to the employer or to the school system to validate who we are. So the data checks is the thing that we really need to make sure of too. We need to be able to verify all types of verifiable credentials and doing special checks based on the use case. And that's verification. Is it well formed? Has it been tampered with? We know that in the blockchain really quick. Is the issuer authentic, right? And that's a big one because we do have people that will cheat. What would happen if the issuer is not an authentic company, or is considered a diploma mill, or is on the Department of Education's 200 horrible colleges never to go to? You would want to check all that stuff. It would bring some really interesting angst to education to have that issuer authentic. It would really bring some really big angst to it. And then what happens if someone goes out of business? All those ITT tech credentials didn't just suddenly go away. People earn those even if they paid a lot of money for them. Though the issuer is deemed non-authentic when they got shut down by the government, but during the time that they were running, they were considered authentic. So big issue, right? Not small. If you've earned those credentials, even if the college shut down, you earn those credentials. Was it timely? Is the status current? In other words, is all the data what it needs to be, where it needs to be? And then is it fit for purpose? So the idea behind that fit for purpose is really kind of an interesting viewpoint, and that set of checks that would not be permitted by common libraries are performed by this whole process to assert or assess whether to accept that credential or not. So your employer may say, oh, dude, no, I don't like that credential. I don't like that company. I'm not going to accept that. And again, that's going to be at the employer's discretion. Or if you're doing a transcript evaluation of the college, oh, I'm not going to take that for college credit. That's completely at the discretion of the college or the employer on that one. So veracity is really more of a personal check on that one, right? So there's a lot of neat code for education out on GitHub, and we're going to go through all that code at GitHub here in a little bit on the learner credential wallet and wallet specification. But I really did kind of want to go through this because it's not complete in my mind that as an educator, as a professional educator, there are things in here I'm going to want to know about. And if you go through and you become part of this process, you really have an opportunity to change how education takes a look at how we're going to manage educational records inside the blockchain, or even if it's a viable alternative. But the cool part, this is one of those few technologies that actually has some real headway on it, right? You've got big brand names, you've got an international consortia of people trying to do this, and you have people's attention. So this would be a neat project to work on if you are interested in learning blockchain outside of Bitcoin. Blockchain in education, I think, is going to be the next really, really interesting thing to take a look at. All right, thank you for being here as part of this lecture. I will see you in the next one. We do some code review over there at GitHub.